drop the bomb.
Drop the bomb.
Drop the bomb.
Drop the bomb.
We gonna drop the bomb.
Drop the bomb.
We gonna drop the bomb.
Drop the bomb.
We come to drop the bomb.
Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS, is the unexplained death, usually during sleep, of a seemingly healthy baby less than a year old. SIDS is sometimes known as crib death because the infants often die in their cribs. Although the cause is unknown, it appears that SIDS might be associated with defects in the portion of an infant's brain that controls breathing and arousal from sleep. Well, researchers have discovered some factors that might put babies at extra risk. They've also identified measures you can take to help protect your child from SIDS. Well, my next guest knows this story all too well. Shantell Roberts, the creative genius behind the Portable Alternative Crib, or PAC, lost her daughter from SIDS and is now on a mission to cut down on the negative effects of bed sharing and SID-related deaths. Let me just tell you, it was hard to get this woman into the studio. She's winning all these awards, been to Cuba, been to the UK, been to Kentucky Fried Chicken before she came in here. Put your hands together, Sound Bomb and family, to my girl, my sister, Shantell Roberts, who almost knocked the water over in the studio. This is our first, you the first interview for the new studio, girl. Your phone ringing, you about to knock the water over, about to get us kicked out of the building. What's happening?
Thank you for having me, LaMarr.
I had to introduce.
Thanks for inviting me back.
Yes. So let me back up. Again, I recorded her in June. She had just come back from Cuba. We're going to talk about that. And we had a dope interview. And I had to say to her, let me just take a look real quick. The recording, for whatever reason, did not stick. And I think that you were like lightweight hating on me because I would call you, the producer, Darius Wilmore, would send you emails. She wouldn't follow up with me because now she's won all these awards. And then I see her at the Ben & Jerry's to Harker Brothers event with my mother. And I think she was only nice to me because my mother, who came in from Chicago, who was a social worker, was so intrigued by what you were doing. So then I put you on the spot, had to go get the producer, Darius, who's here filming, to say, man, let's lock her down right now. So I had to say all of that to say, welcome, bienvenidos. Bienvenidos to the studio. Welcome to the Sound Bomb and Studios home, girl. Well, you are busy. I mean, first of all, before we get into everything that you're doing, you were just nominated for another award. I guess the top 40 under 15 years old. I mean, what is it?
It was interesting. So the Daily Record, they do this 40 under 40 successful people thing.
And you're only 23, right?
I wish. So I got that, but they also do leading women. That's just fully specific on women that are doing great things in the state of Maryland. So I just got that also. So I got.
What about you? Lightweight bragging on air right now? No, go ahead.
No.
Let him know.
It was just interesting because I was like, oh, I think the Daily Record likes me. But that actually just came out on Friday.
So these are two awards.
Two separate awards.
So one for top 40 under 40, and then one for
being a woman doing kick-ass.
Being a woman for just doing. You can say kick-ass on this
station.
Thank you. Saying kick-ass on this station. Wow. So man, first of all, we are OSI brother and sisters. We are OSI. Shout out to Soros. Shout out to Pam. Shout out to George Soros. You know your boy Donald Trump hates George Soros, so you know we love him.
We love him.
Soros is doing some amazing. Thank you for that. I missed that stipend. Let me just tell you, that stipend was Holy Ghost defined.
Okay.
That money would be dropped into their bank account
through wire transfer.
Through wire transfer. But it ain't about the money, OSI. Shout out to Pam. Shout out to all the great OSI fellows. But today it's about you. So how I talked about in the intro, your daughter being sick. So your daughter got sick, and she eventually transitioned. So sorry to hear that. Is this why you were so adamant about doing this work around SIDS or just working with young people?
Well, yes. When my daughter died, I was 24. I lived at home with my mom, and at the time, her dad was transferred to Jacksonville, Florida, for a job through the Department of Justice. So we were separate. So it's very much like being a single parent. And so I had just got my first good job, as my mother would say, because I worked at Morgan. It was a state job. And she got sick over the weekend. And she got sick. I took her to an urgent care. And they did a flu cultural and they did a strep cultural, and both came back negative. And essentially it was a viral infection, which is just like a cold. And I was told that if she wasn't better in 3 days, which would make that following Wednesday, to bring her back. And for perspective, that Wednesday I was at Vaughn. So it was a super traumatic time in my life, for my family, especially my mother, because she was at home in the bed with my mother when it was discovered. And through that, like, I did peer-led group therapy, I did individual therapy, my mother as well. And that was where I found that other parents had lost their children through sudden infant death syndrome or stillbirth or miscarriage. But it was something about SIDS that kind of stood out to me, because there was no one reason why. It wasn't like, a person that gets shot with a handgun, it's like, oh, they died from a bullet. But with SIDS, it's a combination of things. So they never have like, oh, your baby died because of this. And so that's really kind of how I zeroed in on.
So you took that pain and then you turned it into some passion to then affect the lives of other people in the city. What was your daughter's name?
Her name is Tyler.
Tyler. Spell Tyler. Just spell Tyler's name.
It's Tylour.
Wow.
My mother. I think about my mother just at full circle, because my mom was 14 when she had me. So the outcome of my daughter could have been my outcome. Because I think about the families I work with, and the resources that they're lacking, some of them, or just the educational across the myriad that they're lacking. So thank God for grace. For grace, yeah. Over my mother, yeah. Because my daughter's outcome could have been mine.
So what are some physical factors associated with SIDS?
Well, so first things first, October is sudden infant death syndrome.
This month?
Yeah.
See how it works out? Look at you. I know I interviewed you in June. Yeah. Now we're back to see how it all works out. Full circle. So this month.
SIDS and infant loss awareness month.
Okay.
So in terms of like demographics, African American boys are actually twice the rate of white counterparts at dying from SIDS.
Now let me just stop you, because my work is centered around Black and Latino boys. And you mean every negative thing that exists about our boys, you're talking about boys of color have a higher rate.
It's actually 2.7 times.
So just one coming out the womb already can be a challenge. And then getting here, you're already, I want people to hear that. So these young men are already at a disadvantage coming out already.
Absolutely. Just generally speaking, the racial disparity in terms of birthing outcomes in Baltimore City, just Baltimore City, is again also 2 times the rate of white.
So living in this city,
birthing outcomes are just already lacking in the sense of just having successful birth. That means carrying the baby to full term, moms having consistent prenatal visits, being in good health, because maternal health is synonymous with infant health. So if you're already not healthy and you have an unhealthy pregnancy, more than likely you're going to have a less than subpar birthing outcome.
So why that particular group, in particular boys of color?
Well, if we think about it, like, and I say this not being ridiculous, but I'm stressed out because my great-grandmother was stressed. Stress is hereditary. And, stress eats away at you. It's in your DNA. You're passing stress off to, my great-grandkids, what I'm stressed about today. And so I'm stressed about what my great-great-grandmother was stressed about, and that affects your birthing outcome. And then coupled with poor oxygen, coupled with lack of nutrition, living in food deserts, access to health care. All of those things are coupled with your birthing outcome. And something that's really interesting is I go to Carver Vocational High School, Technical High School every year to talk about SIDS for their child care students. Shout out to Carver. And one of the things that I lead with is I tell them, what if I told you that your birthing outcome would be affected by where you live.
We're going back to the zip code again.
Where you live.
Yes.
And and then I kind of break it down to another level and say, okay, so what if I said that your baby has a better chance of living if they were born in 21210, which is Roland Park, versus 21217, which is Sandtown.
I would have felt bad if you said my zip code.
And so it's always interesting because they come at me. Yeah. But I want them to come at me because who else is going to say it to them? Like, these are their lives.
And that makes it personal when you talk about a zip code. My daughter was in a play this summer, and they did a play about zip codes. And they said your zip code shouldn't determine the school that you get a chance to go to.
Or anything else.
And we're starting to see that. So what's their response when you mention their zip code?
I'm ignorant, you stupid. Like, I say that you don't make no sense, that's dumb. And then we can go into the data. Let's talk about the data because you are the data. You just don't know you're the data.
First of all, these kids called you ignorant and dumb.
Yeah.
You need security next time.
Okay.
The next time you give a lecture,
get invited back.
You get invited back. Okay, I got you.
I mean, because we get to a point, that's the point of contention all the time.
Yeah.
Because you are that, that exhibit. You are that that specimen A against specimen B. Like, you were one of those specimens. And
what's unfortunate, coming from you, is hard to receive. But coming from white folks, this is what people don't realize. Like, if you're a white practitioner, you're coming in, you had a robe on, a stethoscope. You said, my name is Dr. Shantell Roberts. They're more open to listen to you. But someone who's from the hood, where they come from, who's gone through these challenges, because we go back to this, the ice is colder than those individuals. And so I'm glad that you sort of push them to have this conversation because many people won't go into these particular schools. Why did you choose George Washington Carver?
Well, Carver, they have a child care program. So essentially what happens is the students, when they graduate, they have their licensures needed to be child care providers. So being the future daycare providers, child care providers, whatever myriad of services you explore in that field, you're going to be responsible for children. You're going to be responsible for infants. So, of course, we talk about SIDS, but holistically, let's talk about family planning. What are your next 3 to 5 years? Like, do you want to get birth control or not? Are you taking care of your body? Are you going to the doctor? Let's talk about all those things because your health doesn't start when you get pregnant, and it doesn't end after you have the baby. And and we don't even have sex ed in school anymore.
They're having sex in school, but not sex ed.
There's
some education going on, but not some traditional education.
Okay. Yeah. And so it's just those things. And ultimately, when we get to that whole topic around family planning and contraceptives and birth control, like that's always the meat of the
Why do you think people are afraid to have that conversation? Like my pastor said, everybody in church is having sex, but nobody wants to. They don't want to talk about it. Like, for example, it always starts out with biology, right? It always starts out with chemistry. Right. But it ends with what? Biology.
It is.
And so the reality is, why do you think people are afraid to have conversations about that? And then, like, when you're talking about the possibility of death, I mean, these are things that are going to happen.
I think in terms of the sex conversation, it's a generational discomfort. When I go into a house with, let's just say, a grandma, my mom, and a young daughter, let's say.
And typically they're almost the same age. Grandma 55, daughter 25, and the granddaughter 15.
Practices are repeated. Yeah.
Repeated practice.
But what grandma might be doing with her granddaughter is currently, she might have done what her granddaughter is currently doing, but she's not going to talk about it. The same, like her mother may have witnessed some things that happened, but we're not going to talk about it. But until you bring things to the forefront, like you cannot, it goes unaddressed. You
brought up a good point. There's a great book out called It Didn't Start With Me. And it talks about inherited trauma. It talks about inheriting stuff from your family members that you don't even know. You know how you can look at a picture and your mother say, you're like, Ma, I thought that was me. And your mother said, no, that was your grandmother. And you're like, it looks just like me.
Exactly.
So if we can look, if there's like an image of someone that looks like us, why can't this stuff be in our DNA? So I want to back up a little bit because prior to you being an OSI fellow, you were already a rock star. You won, $25,000 award from the Social Innovation Lab. Yep. Talk about the Social Innovation Lab and folks that might be interested in that. Then we're going to come back to the OSI and what you're doing.
So the Johns Hopkins University Social Innovation Lab is an accelerated business incubator at Hopkins. It's now available for community members. So what that means is that you do not have to be a student, a faculty member, or staff personnel there to apply and get accepted. Essentially, they look for ideas that are impactful and that address painful problems. And they had at least 2 a year, once in the fall, once in the spring, a boot camp. And the boot camp is amazing. So essentially, it's free. They give you free breakfast, free lunch, free information. One, to address the different facets of starting a startup, running a startup. So they do marketing, they do go through logic models. They invite people in to talk about their organizations and just, things that we don't think about, like creating a partnership agreement or MOUs, things like that. But what's most impactful is that you have this barrage of people there that are all wanting to do great things.
So were you intimidated coming into that?
I was. I wasn't even going to. The year I went, I wasn't going to go. I remember it was a rainy Saturday morning, and I was like, I don't even have any money for parking. And then I got to the parking garage, and it was free.
Shows up. Okay. But isn't it interesting how we can talk ourselves out of success? Like you think of all of these excuses. It's raining. You got to see your hair, sister. You don't want the water to hit your hair.
It was pressed.
Parking is an issue. You got your fly gear on. You get there. There's free parking.
Great. And all I had was an idea. And that's what I always remind people of when they go to the boot camp is you start by starting. So even if you just have an idea or you just, you just incorporated or you just did this, like you're doing it. You're doing the work. And so every day you should be doing something that your future self would appreciate. And so that day, that Saturday, the application was actually due that Monday morning. And I remember sitting at my desk that Monday like, forgot to apply. And I did it that morning, like 2 hours. I would never tell anyone else to do this. But I did it in 2 hours. And so when I got the email said I had been invited back for an interview, I was like, well, okay. I guess I did something. But then I got nervous because the interview was, you have 5 minutes to give information that you didn't talk about in your initial proposal. And then we had 15 minutes for questions. Okay, so what didn't I talk about? Oh, I didn't talk about numbers. So that's when I just dove in deep. Like, this is the impact. These are how many babies died. This is this.
So where does that confidence come from? Because you're walking into foreign territory. This is brand new to you. Mm-hmm. You carrying the spirit of your daughter with you. Right. Where does that confidence come to sit in front of these people that don't look like you, many of them, that don't come from the same communities that you come from, may have more degrees? Where does that come from?
My confidence comes from I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work and you're not. So, you can say I don't have a myriad of letters behind my name. I don't have $1 million in the bank. But at the end of the day, each portable alternative crib that I give to a family, I'm saving a baby. And you can't take that from me. You can't take that from that baby. So until you're doing something to see me at that, then I'm okay.
So are there days where you don't feel okay? Are there days when you don't want to do this work? And if there are, what do you then do? Where do you pull from?
I think that, I never really see my outreach to the families and providing them with resources as the work. My work comes from the applying for the data collection part, where I'm like, okay, how much impact am I actually making?
Stuff that's not that much fun.
Like the not fun part, the meetings, the explaining myself of why this is a painful problem. When you have someone that says, okay, Shantell, well, we have 300 homicides for the year, which we had last year, but you had 16 babies to die. It's only 16 babies. And so then I'm like, okay, well, you have 3 children. Which one of them can you live with? Don't come for my baby. I am very overprotective with my babies that are not.
That's when the sister girl comes out, huh?
Don't come for my babies. One baby is too many. So to say to someone that already has gone through a loss, and even if I hadn't gone through a loss, somebody did. So to say if it was 16 or 1,600, it was a person. That gets me every time.
Wow. So let's go back to this OSI fellowship.
Okay.
Because you just winning stuff all over the place. So let me ask you this: why do you think that these blessings are coming to you? I mean, why do you think that they're lining up one after the other after the other? What are you doing to do that?
That is a hard question. I really don't know. I know that I do the work. I do the work and I don't look for any type of recognition. I really don't. I have a 5-year-old, and so my work is my work, and then when I've done my community work, I'm home, and my son does not care about a box. He cares about, right now he's on peanut butter and jelly. Yeah. That's his thing. He cares about PJ Masks.
His time. He wants his time. That's his time.
And so I do think that people are recognizing it because I've had some media. So I think media is a part of it. But at the same time, it's also my families that are speaking to it, that the ones that needed it. When I did my data from April 2017 to April 2018, of 3,025 families, 60% of them didn't have anywhere for their babies. So that's 60% of people that could have potentially slept their baby in an unsafe space and their baby could have died. So like when you start looking at it like that, it's like, okay, I'm not doing this for me. Like as Christians say, like it ain't never about you. It's never about you. It's about people seeing the God in you. And so I think about that, like, okay, if I sat at the boot camp that day and never applied, I would never be doing this, and then those families would still be without. And so, like, I always think about that, like, if I had never step.
Yeah, you just said it, that first step. So then this other step comes up, then you get the opportunity to apply for the OSI fellowship that we both sharing.
And I was so nervous.
Walk me through that, the day that you got your envelope.
Painful.
Tell me where you were. How did you find out? What were you doing in that process? Walk us through that.
When I found out I got it.
When you found out that you got it.
So I, at the time that I was in the social innovation lab, I worked at a local agency. And I was very much unhappy with work. I wasn't unhappy with the work that I was doing. It was just like bureaucratic stuff. And I knew ultimately I was going to have to make a decision because me doing the boxes and safe sleep, like it was becoming like a full-time thing while I had a full-time job. And so I had applied in OSI. For anyone that has ever applied to OSI or anyone that will ever apply to OSI, it's a very long process. And I remember over the summer, I had this very, it was a very interesting interaction that I had with a family in East Baltimore, and I didn't like the way my management handled the scenario. And I remember saying to one of my coworkers, I have got to get out of here. And we made a bet. There's a building going up on Light Street, and where I was in my office, we were on the 10th floor, and I said, Amy, we have got to be out of here by the time that building goes up.
So that was the time.
That was the time.
That was the time.
And we would come in over the weekend, and I'd be like, oh my God, they did the garage over the weekend. And
that's a good marker, though. It's almost like watching the sand, but you're watching something being built right in front of your eye.
I don't typically go down Light Street, but I went down Light Street last Thursday, and like the sign it's like where the new M&T is.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
about. Oh my, I would just have ran out of the window. It would go up. But I'll remember I was sitting at the light at Hillen Road and Lock Raven, Cold Spring, right at Morgan. I was at the light. I was about to hook up with one of my girlfriends that worked at Morgan, and Katie Caldwell, shout out to Katie, called me. Said, hi, Shantell. You know, pleasantries. And then she's like, you know.
That was a good invitation.
Right. Congratulations. And I like screamed. Like I had a full on shouting session at the light. I know everybody in line that turned the line going on the Cold Spring. I know they thought I was crazy. I know they did. But they had not, like, I was literally at my wit's end. Like,
so what did that do for you, though, as a person, for your spirit, for the people around? What did it do for you?
I think it was my first, like, really, like, impactful validation moment. Like, it was very validative, which is, like, being in the work now, validation drives me crazy. But it was like, okay, so someone else has identified this as a problem.
It's like they get you. They get it. Yeah.
Because even in going through my Hopkins incubator, one of my good girlfriends, Brittany Young with B360, shout out to Brittany, she's doing STEM with dirt bikes. And I'm putting babies in boxes. And we were the two only black girls in the cohort. And they're like, nope, don't get it. And so we would sit there like, so you had to vote within the cohort for the final $25,000 prize. So about February, we started in November. So by February, Brittany and I, we would like do our work. We were still doing our work. But we had ruled ourselves out like, they're not going to vote for us. They're not voting for us. Like, you doing dirt bikes, I'm doing babies in boxes. They still asking me why I'm not giving them credit. Like, this isn't going to happen. But the way you vote on like very structured things. And I was very surprised that I won because if that would have said the box, I don't think I would have won. But it was like characteristics. It was, progress. It was people doing the work. Those were how the questions were centered that you voted on.
So what advice do you have for other would-be social entrepreneurs who wants to start a venture?
Well, I said earlier, I think I'll probably have another one, but start by starting. Like, you're not going to get anywhere if you don't do anything. If it's, making a list of stuff you want to do, make a list of goals. Where do you want to be in 3 years? Like, do you want to volunteer somewhere? Do you want to send an email to someone?
So you're writing all this stuff down
like,
and you're looking at it.
do something. Like, you have to do something more than what you did today or what you did yesterday. Get used to failing. Get used to no. Because if you're not failing, this is not me, this is Denzel Washington. If you're not used to failing, then I'm going to ruin this. Failing means you're trying.
Yeah. Well, failure is what it is. Failure is learning.
You learn from
like
failure.
when people say failure is not an option, no, it is an option.
It is.
Because failure is learning. That's what it is.
Yes.
And we try to, when you look at the most successful people, depending on how you define what success is, failure is learning. That's it. It's just redefined in a different way. And so to hear you say that, and then to be a young lady, a girl of color who's dealing with that.
Other
yeah. So let's talk about those challenges. Are you seeing, girls, in particular women of color, not being able to go after the funding that they should deserve? Because again, you're dealing with a major issue that affects women, not just black women, but just women in general.
I think one of the biggest things that I could have learned in the Social Innovation Lab cohort was to know your audience. And so, whereas I could meet with a group of nurses from a hospital who are moms, they may get the issues around sudden death and death syndrome more than a group of corporate white men that work in tech. So how do I give them the same painful problem 2 different ways with the same information?
Which is a skill.
For them to get it. Because, I may pull on the heartstrings of the moms, but it's more of the data and the money that's affiliated with it to the tech people. But it's a skill set. I am not perfect at this, but I'm learning it, and it's really about knowing that audience. Because for the white techies, it may be, oh, she has a bleeding heart, versus no, like this is the painful problem.
So do you think that you would be doing this work if your daughter hadn't died?
That's the funny thing about life. Like, things in life happen that changes your trajectory, and you regroup. And so for me and my grief, like, I found comfort in this. Like, it became like my baby personified. But everyone's grief doesn't like show like this. Some people don't want to do, something in memorial, in memory of
gotcha.
of their deceased child. Some people, it's a lot. Because at the end of the day, I remind people, all the accolades, all, the funding, whatever happens, I would trade it all for my daughter. All of it. Because I am reminded of it every day when I go see children. Or I'm reminded of it when, I have to tell her story. And I'll never forget it when you get OSI fellowship, because everyone that's listening, you get it and they do an interview. And I'm so kind of desensitized to the story because I know the story. I relive it. I tell it all the time. And I got a question that I never get. And it was, tell me about your daughter. And I lost it. And I had to apologize because it had been so long where I had just talked about her. Like, tell me about your daughter. What kind of baby was she? What is she like? And I was like, damn. Like, you asked me this question, and in answering the question, like, I just became a crybaby mess. Because it's a real issue. This isn't, and this is not to discredit anyone's work because everyone's doing work. But at the end of the day, it's a life. And it was my life. It's blood of my blood, flesh of my flesh. And that's just the space that I'm operating from every day. So it gets rough because I still have triggers. I still have people that aren't, receptive of the education.
Well, speaking of stories, I want to play The Medicine Show, which came out 2017. It was in honor of your story. You want to sort of intro of how that actually works?
Oh, absolutely. So Red Bull and Mafiko, they launched their first medicine show in the summer of 2016. So essentially what they did was they matched creators of startups with local creatives. That's poets, singers, comedians, a myriad of creators in the city to essentially talk about what their ventures and their startups were about. And I was partnered with Lady Breon, amazing spoken word artist, world-renowned spoken word, to retell my story through a piece that she wrote. And she did an incredible.
All right, so we're going to take a listen to Lady Breon.
Welcome to the Medicine Show, where artists meet entrepreneurs and stories are told.
It's 12:28. A white lab coat and silver stethoscope says, "Mommy, it's time." And I think there are so many old people and evildoers in this world, but this time of death, 12:28, was reserved for my baby girl, whose flush pink cheeks are now bruised blue. As I walk to her room, numb, paramedics departed, but the beeping machines remained a reminder that my baby girl's heart was no longer on beat. Questions poured in on repeat. Coroners questioned criminal intent. Medical examiners assumed negligence, asked, "Where was daddy?" Response, "Florida, new job." Police officers interrogate mom in need of psychiatric treatment, because she held baby upon her chest, watched a giggling spirit grow unresponsive, limp limbs and distant eyes, and I question, did mama overdose baby? Was it the children's Tylenol? Was it the viral infection after all? Did patient first discharge baby too soon? My mind stalls. Maybe this isn't real, but nurse hands me diamond stud earrings, proof that she really wasn't coming home with me. You know, you never really appreciate a child's warm body till you've held a cold one. Never understand the need for therapy until you're in the middle of a group session, and there I sat, telling the story of how my baby died of MRSA pneumonia, listening to the hysteria fumbling from the mouths of mourning mothers after miscarriages, after sudden infant death syndrome, and stories of stillborns one after the next. Parents who never heard their baby laugh or love or live. Parents who found baby cold in crib, or those searching for answers as I did. And without my baby girl, this gave me purpose. So I decided to start a nonprofit and launch a campaign, because my baby didn't die in vain. I couldn't save my baby, but I will save someone else's. In 2009 to 2015, there were 106 sleep-related infant deaths. My Tyler was one. I was 24. So now I push to educate new parents until infant sleep-related deaths are no more, especially for the poor who can't afford separate sleeping spaces, so couches and bunk beds become babies' dread. For this, I've created the portable alternative crib. Small enough for compact space convenience, free for those who are too impoverished to afford it. For every pack purchased, one is given to a family in need, as we believe in touching young lives, so another family will never have to feel my grief.
Give it up for Lady.
So that was Lady Breon retelling the story of Shantell Roberts. Give me your response to that story once you hear it every so often. Or if you listen to it every so often, what are your thoughts about it?
I loved it. I think she did an incredible job. It was interesting when we talked about it after she did the show, and she told me that was probably the hardest piece that she's ever done. Because I didn't hold any bars. Like, I told her everything. I told her absolutely everything. And that was a part of the interview where she said, is there anything specific that you want me to say? And I said, okay, well, we'll like iron out the whole SIDS definition and some things here. But a realization for me that day my daughter died was we were in the room where, she was, and the nurse let me hold her. And so now that I have a 5-year-old son, one of the things I said to Breon is that you don't ever really value a warm body until you're forced to hold a cold one. And I said, Breon, I want you to put that in there. Because some people don't really appreciate, like, you're here with me today and you can be gone tomorrow. So, like, you better come get this hug, because tomorrow I could not be here. And so, like, my son sometimes, and I reflect back to it, which is a really morbid kind of way of thinking, but I reflect back to that moment where I was holding my deceased daughter some nights when I'm holding her. And I'm like, oh, don't ever grow up, stay in a bubble.
Yeah, you don't want them to grow up, man. I know that feeling, because I have children, and my son, who's gotten so much taller, I miss the days of picking him up. Let's talk about the design of the portable crib.
Okay.
Because I got a chance to see it up close, and my mom was really intrigued by it. Talk about the design.
Sure.
Where did it come from? Who designs it? And then how could people who need one pick one up?
Sure. So I used to work at the Baltimore City Health Department. And one of the things that I did there, I was the safe sleep coordinator, and I would provide families with free pack and play. And a part of that would be going to their homes and giving them the pack and play and education around SIDS prevention. And a lot of times, especially in the city, because the program was specifically for low-income families, I would get to a home and their space would be so limited that the pack and play wouldn't fit, or with so much going on in the city and families getting housing vouchers and Section 8 outside of the city, they would no longer qualify because the program would only be for Baltimore City residents. So I would always be forced to think about, like, well, what about this 30%, this percent of people that didn't qualify, like their kids still need somewhere to sleep. And so I looked at researching, like, just other countries, like what do they do in other low-income places. Baltimore City is the only place with low income. And Finland, they essentially launched a universal baby box or box bassinet program in the 1930s. And here it was, 2016, and we still have babies in the U.S. in Baltimore City dying from unsafe sleeping spaces. And then I learned that Dr. Hare at Temple University Hospital, she launched the first baby box program at Temple University Hospital. So what that looked like is that every mom, very similar to the Finnish, every mom that had a baby went home with a box bassinet with resources.
This was in Philly.
This is in Philly, and it was great because
when was that again?
This was April 2016.
Oh wow! Okay.
And so I was like, wait, so their demographics kind of look like ours.
Baltimore, yeah.
So this might work. So I went through the accelerated business incubator. And I had to do focus groups, and I had to meet with manufacturers, which was probably one of the hardest tasks that I had to do, because you have me walking in like, hi, my name's Shantell Roberts, and I want to put babies to sleep in boxes. And so I would literally have cardboard box manufacturing companies like, well, we ship meat. Like, have you ever shipped a baby? Like, so the ink on your box,
not. Yeah.
If a baby licks the side of the box, like, what's the opportunity they can die? Or what about a humidity test? And yeah, a lot of pushback. So my idea of having...
But they were learning. They were lessons, right?
I learned a lot.
Okay.
I know way too much about cardboard at this point. But...
I better not catch you licking the side of the box.
That won't happen. But babies, they go their whole oral phases. And so I needed to know, like, is the ink water soluble? Like, is it a water-based soluble
you asking
ink?
some serious questions, yeah.
What's the recyclable percentage? Is it fully recyclable? Like, how'd you make it? For marketing purposes for me, too. And so I ended up finding a manufacturer in Michigan. And so, since then, I've found someone in Maryland. So I hope this partnership works out, which would be great. Because ultimately what my idea is to kind of mirror how Scotland does it. Scotland has partnered with a manufacturing company, and they provide boxes to every mom in Scotland. And so to know that I've created the platform, I've created some data sets I'm about to publish, hallelujah, and kind of build this out across the state, like I'm very happy with it. To see, okay, I can use what I've done for the past year and a half and like expand it across the state to help other people. Like I'm thrilled, nervous, terrified, all that.
You got it. So how many cribs have you guys produced thus far?
To date, when I checked on Friday, I haven't checked today. I was at
5,200.
50 in 6 jurisdictions. So it's Baltimore City, County, Cecil County, Frederick County, and Dorchester County.
And your work has taken you to Cuba.
Yes.
So you were in Cuba. Did you go to Finland? Because I know you were somewhere in Europe.
So I went to Glasgow, Scotland, which
Went to Scotland, okay.
Scotland, and I went to London, England.
So let's talk about Cuba. What were you doing in Cuba? Why were you there?
So Cuba has one of the lowest infant mortality numbers in the world.
Yeah,
and
you would think, looking at the media, that everything that going again, these are people that look like us. They just speak Spanish, African roots,
That's
European roots. But the lowest, say it again, at the lowest what?
Infant mortality number.
So you were there researching, okay?
So I was able to visit daycare centers, a couple medical sites.
So how did this feel, little brown girl from Baltimore?
It was so funny.
Humble beginnings. Now listen, 5,200 cribs designed, already out. You're going to Cuba. You're going to Scotland. You went to London. Think about that. That's a big deal.
It was.
Writing papers, producing research.
Yeah.
What did you learn while you were in Cuba?
So in Cuba, it was interesting because, I'm from Baltimore. And I remember when I got there and I said, when you're in Cuba, because the tech infrastructure is completely different. So there was no way for me to speak with him while I was in the U.S. And I said to him on my Cuban phone, is there anything I should be cognizant of? Should I tire, like colors, anything? Like I'm thinking of safety. And he says to me, which I will never forget, he said, "Man, you're from Baltimore. You'll be fine."
Did he say it in Spanish?
Yes, but I'm like,
I just think Baltimore.
Yeah, like, what? Are you coming at me right now?
Baltimore is on the international scene in Cuba.
But it was interesting.
He played Baltimore on the slick side.
Yeah,
right?
he did. He totally did.
But that said a lot about you being prepared.
I was ready.
Because a lot of folks, mentally, they may be prepared, but you talking about culturally now.
No, culturally,
are you comfortable moving around?
Because even when I went to Scotland, like they don't do a whole lot of picture taking. Like you gotta ask. You have to ask. Even at the conference, it's like, can I take a picture of this sign? I don't know. I have to ask.
So what surprised you about what you discovered in Cuba about this particular issue?
That it is a community. That daycare centers aren't like the thing. Like in America, in Baltimore City, I have a baby. I'm like, okay, after 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I need to find a daycare for my child to go to. In Cuba, it's very much a family affair. Like there are siblings and other family members that won't go back to school or won't go back to work to stay home to watch the baby and take care of the baby. At the daycare, there was, I think the youngest child at the daycare center was 2 because they stay home. Moms get to stay home. Their birth outcomes are better than ours. One, because it's a true universal healthcare system. And their educational system is free also. So they have some of the best medical providers to have. Now, do you have a little wait? Yes. But you get seen. You get seen. And I will never forget the story of one of the grandmothers at one of the homes I visited.
Oh, abuelita.
She was amazing. And one of her friends came to America because her son had his first child, helped out within the first year. And during that first year, she learned she had cancer. And she got really sad because she shared that more than likely her friend is going to die in America because she can't afford to fly back to get free health care to save her. And I was like, that's why the world hates America. Like this woman, she's a Cuban woman that's going to die in America because she can't afford treatment for her cancer. And that in and of itself, it was like a light bulb. And so in taking that story with me to the UK, where they again have another universal healthcare system, and I had one of the guys I visited shared that he had a brother, and he had a really bad really bad motorcycle accident in Hyde Park. It's Hyde Park, I believe it is. And so he called it the air ambulance. The air ambulance took him to Royal London Hospital, saved his life. He didn't spend a dime. Not a penny was spent to save this man's life. That would never happen in America. And to see that, all of these European countries are putting such an emphasis on prenatal care for their moms, linking them with doulas, linking them with midwives, linking them with resources, not just for infancy, but all the way from the time the baby's born all the way up to 12 months. Like, how are we making those accommodations for American families? Like, how are we keeping mom at home or keeping a support system for mom at home or providing them with the resources? Because what a lot of times people don't think about, public health is synonymous with public safety. You take care of a person, you ain't got to worry about your safety. You don't take care of a person, you now need to worry about your safety. And, we want to come up with all these grand plans and these systems and everything, but it's really about getting to the root of what people need and not giving them Band-Aids or bullet wounds.
Throughout this process, throughout your travel through Europe and through Cuba and the United States, what have you learned about yourself, Shantell? What have you discovered that you didn't know?
I learned that I think I really started to accept this when people call me resilient, because I've met other bereaved families and other bereaved moms, even just day-to-day work. Being able to bounce back and come back tomorrow. Everyone doesn't have that. It gets hard. Every day is not easy by a long shot. But I think I finally acknowledged, or I finally identified, like, oh wait, I think I am special here, because where somebody would have just kind of given up, like, I'm gonna come back.
So what keeps you going?
Well, one, knowing that I'm doing this for my daughter. One. Secondly, because my son is watching. And I love that he gets to see his mom in this space, which is funny enough when LaMarr saw me at the ice cream social, like, I have him. So a lot of times when I do outreach events, Lexington Market, Impact Hub, a community, he's with me, because this is how you eat. And this is, you're never any better than anyone else. Like, we are one grant, one check, one swipe away from being the families that need the resource. And I think a lot of times, with wins, people forget that. But not. Especially raising a little black boy. Like, you should be exposed to these things. You should be exposed to entrepreneurship. You should be exposed to, startups and just this way of life, community. But I think, especially for, just the families that I know exist, that need the resources. Like, if we're not going to do it for ourselves, then how is it going to get done?
So do you think you're walking in your passion?
I definitely think I'm doing it now. I think it's not safe. And a lot of times my friends and some of my colleagues are like, Shantell, what's going to happen in another 5 years? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But I know what I'm doing today. And I know what I'm doing today is impactful enough to create a better. But I'm not at Constellation Energy, and I can't tell you that I have this amazing retirement plan if I stay there for 20 years. But I know that in 20 years, I probably have a baby that's slept in a box that's in college. Or he's doing something, he's alive. So I'm okay with that. But it becomes emotional. Like I said earlier, I have 5,000 babies. These are not my babies. But they're my babies.
But they're yours, yeah.
They're mine. So I have a great deal of pride of saying that, of all my 5,000 babies that are sleeping in boxes, none of them died. And I'm okay with that. Like, I can lose a couple hours of sleep at night, making sure that mom is using the box correctly and, sending me pictures of the baby sleeping. It's great.
So do you get pictures up quite often?
I do. Okay. We become friends.
Okay.
Some knowingly and unknowingly sometimes.
Right. So this is the part of the show where I ask these super bomb questions.
Oh my God.
But before I ask the super bomb questions, how can our listeners get in contact with Miss Shantell Roberts?
You can find me and my work at touchingyounglives.com, on Instagram at Touching Young Lives, on Facebook at Touching Young Lives Incorporated, on Instagram on Twitter It is Touching YG Lives. And if you'd like to reach out to me through email, it's Shantell Roberts at touchingyounglives.com.
So what's your favorite word?
Subjective. Subjective. I say it all the time.
So what sound do you love to hear?
A child's gift.
What's your superpower?
I try to be an optimist, and I try to get other people to be an optimist. So I guess I sprinkle optimism dust.
What's your animal spirit?
Oh, a Leo all day.
Leo lion. I can see that. Oh, yes, Lord.
All day.
Leo lion. Walk me through your morning routine. What's your morning routine?
Morning routine. I am up at 5:30. Probably peruse on social media. I'll go through my calendar, check the weather. I get up, I get dressed, I get my son up because he's in kindergarten now. Fight him on a shirt. He's into animals, so if I pick a non-animal shirt, I'm gonna have a fight. And I drive him to school, and I try to get him to school in enough time for breakfast because I love having breakfast with him in the morning, especially in school because I get to see him amongst peers and just like a non-traditional classroom kind of a way. And I love dropping him off at class. Like, I love doing that because it's still very normal for me where everyone else is going to like a corporate job or going to an office. I don't do that. I'm going to Starbucks, so I'm going to Impact Hub. But that's typically my morning, dropping him to school, and then I'm like, okay, where we at?
So what's the one of the best or most worthwhile investments that you've ever made? It could be time, it could be energy, it could be a book. What's the best investment you ever made?
Best investment ever made? That's I truly believe I was supposed to be. I think I've learned more from both of my children than I've learned from any adult. Especially through this journey of just memorializing my daughter through the organization and the work. But then my son, like, he just brings it back to perspective every day. When I'm at home with him, mommy, no computer, put your phone away. And just, he's so imaginative, so just free. What they say, he has black boy joy. And it just reminds me, like, it's really not 50. Like, it's not. And so, it's definitely my children.
Okay, well, we're going to end on that. I want to thank you for taking some time coming to the BalmShelter. You have been a blessing. I thank you for giving back to so many children, people that you may not know. I thank you for coming to hang out with us. This is a very important month, and the month is, again, October.
October is SIDS and Infant Loss Awareness Month.
So you've been amazing. Of course, I want to thank my super duper producer, Darius Wilmore and Supremacy, for our theme music. If you're interested in sound bombing, go to soundbombing.com. This is your man, Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields, and we are sounding off. Peace.